welcome back to Twisted and Mysterious.
Hi. Sorry about missing last week. We had more technical difficulties. We lost that episode to a corrupted card.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was the card. I tried everything. I tried to save it to a different device. I tried a new card reader. I tried everything I could think of.
So maybe we'll cover that episode again another time, but we've got a different story for you tonight.
Yes, we do. So, I guess you want to just jump into it, or?
I guess so. I don't really have anything new going on.
Okay. Well, let me set the scene for you.
Okay.
September 25th, 1968.
All right.
A man named Donald Haynes was driving down Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles when he saw a little girl walking down the street and a man in a beige-colored car with no license plate pull over and lure the little girl into his car. He followed the car to a Hollywood apartment where he witnessed the man take the little girl inside, and Donald Haynes called the police. Now, remember,
As one should.
Yes. It's 1968, so no cell phones, so it wasn't like he could just call the police right away. Mm-hmm. He followed them. He found a payphone. He just said that he didn't want to, try to stop the man directly because he didn't know if the man had a gun or anything, right. So he found a payphone. He called the police. So Los Angeles police officer Chris Camacho had just begun his patrol shift and received and responded to the call. He knocked on the door of the apartment, and a man called out from the apartment that he was in the shower and needed to get dressed. Officer Camacho proceeded to kick the door of the apartment in and could see straight into the kitchen where a little girl was lying bleeding on the floor. The suspect had escaped out the back door. 10 years and at least 5 murders later, that same man appeared on and won an episode of The Dating Game.
Yes, I've heard of this creep.
This is the story of Rodney Alcala, the dating game killer.
Yep.
All right. Do you know a lot about him?
I've seen and listened to other podcasts about him, but I didn't retain, a ton of information. I think the most I remember is that he was a photographer.
Yeah. Okay, so this one's kind of long, but we'll just see how we do with that. So Rodney James Alcala was born Rodrigo Jacques Alcala Bucor on August 23rd, 1943 in San Antonio, Texas. He was the third of 4 children born to Raul Alcala Bucor and Ana Maria Gutierrez. When Rodney was 8, his family moved to Mexico, where his father ended up leaving the family 3 years later, and Rodney's mother took the children and moved to Los Angeles in 1954 when Rodney was 11. According to Wikipedia, Rodney attended private schools in Los Angeles and graduated from Cantwell Sacred Heart of Mary School, which, if you can't tell from the name, is a private Catholic school.
Right.
He was on the yearbook. He ran cross country and track. He was popular among his classmates. He was considered academically gifted. Later, when he's in the Army, his IQ was estimated to be at about 135. And if you are like me, and that means nothing to you.
I was going to say, I don't really know anything about IQ points.
Yeah.
I know that, anything in the double digits is considered kind of low.
Yeah, so I looked up IQ ranges. And according to medicinenet.com, the average person has an IQ range of 90 to 109. 110 to 119 is considered superior intelligence or not gifted, just superior intelligence. 120 to 140 is super intelligence or gifted. And over 140 is considered to be genius.
Okay.
So he's at 135. So he's pretty smart. In 1961, by the way, I also was like, I wonder what my IQ is. So I opened up a thing that was test your IQ in 35 questions or something. It was really boring. But then I did the whole thing and you got to the end and it was pay $10 for your
all
result.
Those things are, I've taken things that are supposed to tell you different things about your health and all kinds of stuff, and they're pay this much to get your full report.
Yeah. So I don't know what my IQ is.
I think the last time I had my IQ tested was in elementary school. I don't even know what it was then.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I ever have. I know I was in a gifted class for a little while in elementary school, but I don't know. Okay, so anyway, back to Rodney. In 1961, he joined the Army and became a paratrooper. Wikipedia says that his commanding officer described him as manipulative, vindictive, and insubordinate.
All right.
Which
Those are all great qualities to have.
Especially in the Army when you're supposed to follow orders all the time. He was disciplined several times for assaulting women, which I'm just like, why wasn't he arrested for assaulting women?
Discipline is not enough.
And apparently not, based on the rest of the story. So he went AWOL in 1964 and hitchhiked from Fort Bragg in North Carolina to his mother's house in California, which is a very long trip.
Yes.
He was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder by a military psychiatrist and was medically discharged.
All right.
After he was discharged from the Army, I'm trying to use the mouse to scroll on my iPad. Mm-hmm. So, there's that. After he was discharged from the Army, he attended and graduated from UCLA School of Arts and Architecture.
Okay.
And so, now let's get back to what happened at the beginning of our story. So, as I started with, September 25th, 1968, the little girl was walking down the street. And her name is Tally Shapiro. Her father was a music executive, and her family was living at the Chateau Marmont. Tally was walking to school when a man pulled over and told her that he knew her parents and was going to give her a ride. And because her parents knew so many people, she was like, well, this could be somebody that knows my parents.
This man probably knows my parents.
Because she said that her house was basically like Grand Central Station. I mean, and they had people like Mama Cass and Jim Morrison coming to their house, you know. Yeah. She was just like, I don't know, this could be somebody my parents know. And she also said that she was raised to respect her elders. So she got in the car with him. And he told her that he was a photographer and wanted to show her a poster at his house. And that's how they ended up going to his apartment. So when Officer Camacho busted into the house, Tally was naked in a pool of her own blood with a metal pipe laying across her neck. It was later determined that she had been raped and beaten with the metal pipe, and that Alcala was attempting to strangle Tally with the pipe when the police showed up. They thought she was dead, and they searched the apartment for Alcala, but when they went back into the kitchen, they heard Tally gagging and struggling to breathe. So she was taken to the hospital, where she stayed comatose for 32 days and was hospitalized for many months, but ultimately she did survive the attack.
Good for her.
Yeah, no kidding. She was 8.
Yeah.
So in a recent People magazine interview, Tally said that she remembers him asking her to get in the car and remembers going into the apartment, but that he must have hit her in the head like right after they got into the apartment, because she remembers nothing of the attack. And her parents never told her what happened to her, and she said that she's grateful for that because it would have ruined her childhood.
Right.
She said that now that she's an adult and she knows what happened to her, it's like separate from her, and so she like can process it better, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like it would just sort of ruin my whole life finding out.
I don't know. Like everything that I've like, because I watched 2 48-hour specials and I watched a Dateline episode, and I read the article that or the interview that she did with People, and she just seems very like put together.
Yeah. I mean, some people are like that, but like I said, I think that it would like ruin my whole life finding out.
Yeah. And I guess, like, I don't know, like, she doesn't seem to feel that way, but, like, I don't know if you would feel, like, betrayed by your parents, like, knowing that, like, they kept that from you and, like, you never knew what had actually happened to you. Yeah. Or maybe, like her, just, like, grateful that you were able to live a normal childhood without that, like, weighing on you for your whole, like, growing up years. I don't know. So Alcala had escaped out of the back door and was in the wind, as the saying goes. The police found an ID with Rodney Alcala's name on it, and he was added to the FBI's 10 Most Wanted, and posters were put up in post offices and government buildings. And I was wondering, do they still do that?
I don't know.
I mean, surely they do, right?
Surely. I mean, I feel like I still see, I don't know. I feel like the last time I went to the post office in Artesia, they still had those, but that's been a while.
I was going to say, because, like, I can remember that from being a kid and going to the post office, but I don't spend a lot of time in the post office anymore. Yeah. And so, probably they do. Because, I mean, I know there's the internet, but I don't know. Surely they do. So then the next we hear from our friend Rodney, it's 1971. And he's using the alias John Berger and attending NYU studying film.
All right.
So on June 12th, Cornelia Creeley...
How do you get into college using an alias, though? Don't you need some sort of proof that you are who you are?
I don't know what it was like in 1971.
No.
Like these days, probably.
I just feel like there would be some sort of identification that they needed other than just like a fake license or whatever he was using.
Yeah, I don't know. But he did go to NYU. One source, and it was the only, I can't even remember where I read it, said that he was studying film under Roman Polanski at NYU. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. But whether or not he got in using his alias or whatever, he was still doing this.
Yeah.
So on June 12th, Cornelia Creeley, a TWA flight attendant, had been moving into a new apartment. Her boyfriend went to her apartment when he got off of work and found her door locked and thought that was weird, and he couldn't get in touch with her. When the police came, they found Cornelia dead. She had been raped and murdered in her apartment in New York. She had been strangled with her own pantyhose, and there was a bite mark on one of her breasts. And at the time, the police had no leads, and the case went cold.
Cute.
Yeah. Now they think that probably he, was preying on her while she was moving and probably, offered to help her move.
Right.
And, So later that summer, Rodney Alcala took a job as a camp counselor at an arts camp for girls in New Hampshire, which is, the exact place he should ever be allowed. Mm-hmm. Or the exact opposite What's the words? The exact last place he should ever be allowed. Yeah. Is that what I said the first time?
No, you said the exact place. But I thought you were being sarcastic.
It probably would have worked better.
I thought it was more like, oh yeah, that's where he should work.
That's exactly where he should work. So he had changed his alias slightly. So he's no longer John Berger, but now he's John Burger. Spelled like the sandwich.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I would have rethought that one.
Yeah. Especially because he's supposed to be so smart.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But I just mean, who wants their last name to be Burger on purpose?
I don't know. Somebody who really likes burgers? I don't know. One day, a couple of kids from the camp had gone into town, I'm guessing to mail letters home or something because they end up in the post office. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember if it was on Dateline or 48 Hours, but they said that it was raining. And so they were just kind of hanging out in the building until the storm passed. Mm-hmm. And they were, just looking around because what else are you going to do? They couldn't play Block Blast.
No.
And so they were looking at the FBI 10 Most Wanted posters that they may or may not still put into post offices.
I'll have to go in a post office. It's been a while since I've been in a post office for more than a second.
So they're looking at the poster and they realize that there's a man on the poster that looks an awful lot like Mr. Burger.
All right, Mr. Burger.
Mr. Hamburger. When they get back to camp, they tell another counselor, and then that counselor goes into town to look at the poster. And the counselor promptly calls the FBI.
Whoa, I know this dude.
Right. So the FBI arrests him and calls the LAPD to let them know that he's in custody and he's returned to California. However, Tally Shapiro's family had since relocated to Mexico, and they did not want Tally to testify for fear of re-traumatizing her. So without their key witness, prosecutors couldn't charge him with rape and attempted murder, and he was instead convicted of child molestation, and he served just 34 months in prison.
That's enough, probably.
It might be enough. I don't think it's enough, though, because of how the rest of the story goes.
Right.
Yes. So, just 2 months after he is released from prison, Rodney Alcala was arrested again for assaulting a 13-year-old girl who he offered to give a ride to school.
He's sweet.
He's the best. He's just looking out for girls walking to school. He served 2 years for that assault and was paroled in 1977 and was required to register as a sex offender. But just like we talked about in the Terry Clark case, the National Sex Offender Registry wasn't even created until 1994.
Right.
And so
what good does it really do you?
Right. And
unless they have to put a yard sign up that says, hey, I'm a sex offender, then I don't really know what good being labeled a sex offender is going to do for
or
you.
branded in your forehead or something. I don't know. But so this happened after the camp counselor thing, but I don't know, I guess short of calling the FBI for a background check for the job or something, they wouldn't have even known that he was a sex offender, like we were just saying. So I don't know. I don't know that even the camp counselors hiring him would have even known.
Right.
So
I don't know how it comes up in the 70s. Where would you get the information from?
Exactly, because now you just run a computer check and it brings
and everything
up all of the
pops
things
up. But back then there wasn't that option, and so where would they get the information that this guy is a sex offender?
So I don't know if they would. I don't know if they would just call the FBI or the police station for a background check, but that seems like a lot of phone calls and trying to find paperwork and
But also who's making these phone calls just to know that this guy's a sex offender?
Yeah, I know.
Who just thinks, I'm gonna call the FBI because somebody moved in next door and
yeah,
I'm gonna make sure that they're not a sex offender.
Right. I mean, and I guess as far as jobs go, I don't know how background checks were conducted then, or even if there were background checks conducted then. So,
and I don't think that everybody hiring somebody is gonna call the FBI and make sure they don't have anything on them.
Right. So now it's July 1977, and Rodney Alcala's parole officer in Los Angeles makes a questionable decision. He grants Rodney permission to fly to New York. So this man has now been convicted of assaulting 2 little girls and is considered to be a flight risk, but I guess we just let him live a little.
Just let him fly.
Just let him fly. So July 15th, which is believed to be about a week after Rodney arrives in New York, but totally different. I mean, not different, but where's he getting this money from?
Right.
Not only that he can just fly back and forth across the country, but he's staying in New York for a week.
I don't know. I was trying to decide if his family had some money because, he got into private schools and...
That's true. Maybe. But, I mean, I guess... Because I was going to say his mom was a single mom with 4 kids, but
if they had already had money, but
that's
I don't
true.
know. But you don't usually send your kid to a private school unless you have some money.
Yeah, and nothing that I saw in anything talked about what his parents did for a living. All it talked about was that they were Mexican Americans and that they had moved to Mexico and the dad left.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. And nothing ever is said about his siblings or anything after that. Yeah. I think one of his sisters makes an appearance a little later, but very briefly.
It's not about them.
It's not about them. So, yeah, I was just how is this man who's spending all of his time in prison and college affording all this travel?
Yeah. Because
prison, you don't make any money, and college takes all of your money. So, I don't know. In July 15th, Ellen Jane Hover disappears. And Ellen was an aspiring musician, and she was the 23-year-old daughter of Herman Hover, who owned the famous Ciro's nightclub in Hollywood. Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr. were her godfathers.
All right.
Yeah. She was reported missing by her family. Police searched her apartment, and in her calendar on the day she disappeared was the name John Berger. And remember that Mr. Rodney Alcala had been using that as an alias when he was going to NYU. But at the time, the police didn't have this information. Ellen's body was found a year later, buried under heavy rocks on a hillside near the Rockefeller estate in Westchester. And based on the autopsy, her death was ruled a homicide, but other than the name John Berger, the police had no leads on her killer. And it was later discovered that Rodney had visited this area before. He had apparently taken at least one model there to photograph at some point. By this time, Rodney had already begun his trip back to Los Angeles. Only this time he was driving and just kind of meandering his way back across the country.
Right.
And when he returned to Los Angeles, he was hired as a typesetter by the Los Angeles Times. And also at this time, the Hillside Stranglers were active in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
And Rodney was actually interviewed by the police in connection with those murders to see if maybe he was the Hillside Strangler.
Right.
He was also still, quote-unquote, working as a photographer. He had convinced hundreds of young women and men that he was a professional fashion photographer and took pictures of them for his portfolio. They were often naked.
That's got a lot to do with fashion, you know.
It really does. Let's see. On December 9th, 1977, Rodney killed Jill Terry Barcombe. Jill was an 18-year-old from New York. She was disposed of on a dirt path near Mulholland Drive in Los Angeles. She was found naked from the waist down. She had been strangled with blue rope ties and beaten. There was evidence of sexual assault. She had 3 bite marks on her right breast, so that it seems to be something that he does.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently the police initially believed that Jill had been the victim of the Hillside Stranglers, but eventually it was determined that her murder was unrelated. And again, they had no leads.
Just lots of creeps hanging out.
No kidding.
Doing stuff.
But I mean, I guess this time it was kind of like rife with serial killers.
I mean, I think always it's rife with serial killers.
I know, but it just seemed like in like the 70s, like there was like Bundy and the Hillside Stranglers, Rodney Alcala and the Green River Killer and Son of Sam, and like all of this stuff was like all going on at the same time. So I don't know. You would think with serial killers, like with the internet, we would hear more about it now.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't, like, when you hear about a serial killer, you're like, whoa, there was a serial killer?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So just a month later after Jill's murder, on December 16th, Georgia Marie Wickstead, a 27-year-old nurse, was discovered dead in her Malibu apartment. Georgia had given another nurse a ride home from a bar the previous night, and when she didn't show up for work the next day, her coworkers reported her missing. Police went to her apartment and found signs of forced entry. She was posed naked on her bathroom floor and had been strangled with pantyhose. There was evidence of sexual abuse. Her skull had been bashed in and her genitals had been mutilated.
Good times.
Yeah. DNA evidence was collected at the scene, and even though they didn't have means to run it at the time, they still collected it. I'm always really, like, I don't know, like, whenever they they collect this DNA evidence and stuff.
Like, what's the point of collecting DNA? We
have
no way to test the DNA.
Yeah, like, why did they think to do that? Like, I don't know, unless they just, like, assumed that maybe someday technology would do that.
I was going to say, maybe they had the foresight to be like, well, hopefully there will be a way for us to check this at some point. Mm-hmm. And
I guess, because it's always, like, it's good that they did it.
Because I'm sure they knew, how important DNA was at the time, but didn't have the technology to really do anything with it. And so they were probably just like, hopefully one of these days we'll have something where we can test this DNA and...
But, like, it's even good that, like, they had found ways to, like, store it, or, like, most of the time where it didn't get destroyed, and, like, but they didn't even know how, like, what to do with it, but it was still something that they thought to collect.
But, I mean, at the same time, you also hear kind of often about things being mishandled back then.
That's
because
true.
They didn't really know what to do with it.
Right. These detectives seem to be on it, though, because they were collecting this evidence. And a handprint was also found at the scene, but they were unable to find a suspect through the evidence that they did have. The next murder that was tied to Rodney Alcala took place on June 24th, 1978. This time, the victim was 31-year-old legal secretary named Charlotte Lee Lamb. She was found dead in the laundry room of her apartment complex in El Segundo. Again, there was evidence of sexual assault. She had been beaten and strangled, this time with a shoelace. She was posed with her hands behind her back. DNA evidence was also retrieved in this case, but again, no suspect. So then Rodney took a little break.
Just a wee one.
Just a little one. That way, on September 13th, 1978, he could appear and win an episode of The Dating Game. Yikes. So,
charming man.
The host of The Dating Game, Jim Lang, introduced Rodney as a successful photographer.
Yes.
I guess they just read anything you write down.
I was going to say, I think it just really has to do with what you put down that your occupation is.
Yeah. He also, I only saw snippets of it, but he says Rodney Alcala when he comes out. So again, I didn't watch the whole episode, but there were some snippets of it on 48 Hours in Dateline. And it's just so weird because, I mean, obviously he doesn't present himself as a serial killer because why would you? And it's just like the hokey, like raunchy show that it was meant to be. And he definitely played into it. And it's the 70s, so I mean, all of their hair and outfits are terrible.
Right.
And so at one point, Cheryl Bradshaw, who was the bachelorette on the show, asked him, "I'm serving you for dinner. What are you called and what do you look like?" And Rodney replies, "I'm called the Banana and I look really good." And like, if it had been anyone else, we would have just like said gag and rolled our eyes.
Right.
But knowing now, like, when you watch it, that, like, that's a serial killer, it's like, I mean, I still said gag and rolled my eyes.
Well, right. And then, like...
But it was still, like, crazy, because you know now, like, this guy, who could have just been anybody. I mean, he was exactly the kind of person who would have been on the dating game.
Right. Well, then there's the guy that was on Family Feud that killed his wife. And then Lori Vallow was on Wheel of Fortune.
Mm-hmm.
So...
True. That's true. So... Yeah, I forgot about that.
That girl that stuck her boyfriend in the suitcase was on that Nickelodeon video game show.
Oh, I forgot you told me about that.
And so...
Yeah.
So was Joey Fatone, apparently.
Huh. Maybe that's how he got his start.
Yeah, I had watched a visual podcast about it one day, and they were talking about her being on that video game show. And they were showing, like, other people who had been on the show, and Joey Fatone was one of them.
And Ron Perlman was like, I want him for NSYNC.
Right.
He's exactly the right guy. Okay, so at the end of the show, Cheryl picks Rodney, who was bachelor number 1. But according to an interview on Dateline, Cheryl called Ellen Metzger, who was the show's contestant coordinator, the next day and told her that Rodney gave her the creeps.
Yeah, I think I remember that.
And she wanted to call off the date. And Ellen said that she understood, and she canceled the date, so they never went on it.
I understand. He gives me the creeps, too.
Right. And honestly, like, that probably saved her life.
Yeah.
Because who knows? I mean, like, I wonder. I thought about it because I was like, I mean, he might have killed her because that's what he did. But because he won a date with her on, like, national TV, would he have killed her? Because
it
they
would have connected him directly to her.
Right. And I tried to find where, I don't remember if it was in Dateline or what, but they had one, I can't remember what exactly the date was. I know part of it was to go to, like, Magic Mountain or something. But I can't remember what the other thing was. But, yeah, so she can take herself to Magic Mountain and not be dead.
And not get murdered doing it.
Yeah. So that was September 1978. February 14th, 1979. So maybe now he's come down off of his television debut high. He picks up a 15-year-old hitchhiker in Riverside County. Her name was Monique Hoyt. He took her to his apartment and raped her, but he didn't kill her there. Then he took her to Joshua Tree and took pictures of her in her underwear. And he took pictures of him raping her again. He then bound and gagged her and assaulted her again. He hit her in the head with a rock. And I don't know why he didn't leave her there. I don't know if he, like, thought she was dead or not. But he put her back in the car. And then he was driving back to Riverside County and stopped at a gas station and went to the bathroom. And Hoyt was not dead. And she escaped. And so I don't know if she went to inside the gas station, asked for help or something. However it happened, she got help. Rodney Alcala was arrested. But his mother posted his bail.
Yeah. And like I said, again, it sounds like they have money.
Yeah. True. I didn't even, like, connect to that whenever we were talking about that. But yeah, his mother posted his bail. Like, he's been arrested. This is the 3rd time for attacking little girls.
Some people just don't believe that their children do these things, or they just, I don't know, they feel like they have to be devoted to their children, even if their children are terrible people.
I guess. But also, like, I don't think he should have been given bail. This is the third time he has attacked a little girl.
Well, I mean, it's just like in the Terry Clark case. They just kept letting him go.
That's true. Yeah. Okay, so next is Jill Marie Parento, I think. She was a 21-year-old computer key punch operator. Obviously she's probably punching keys on a computer. Mm-hmm. What do you think that job is? I didn't Google it. I was just wondering if you knew.
No, I don't think I've ever heard of that one.
No. And it's the 70s, so computers, I guess, are new. But I don't know, because it's not like a switchboard operator.
This says it's data entry.
Oh, okay.
Entered into computers using punch cards and key punch machines.
Oh, okay.
It says each card had up to 80 rectangular holes punched in it by the human, generally female, operator of a large, gray, and noisy IBM key punch machine.
No, okay. So she put holes in cards and then fed it into the computer.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So on June 13th, 1979, she left work early to go to a baseball game. The next day, she was reported missing after she didn't go to work. The police went to her apartment in Burbank. They found signs of forced entry. Jill was dead on her bathroom floor. She was naked and posed with pillows under her shoulders. Again, just like all the others, she had been sexually assaulted, beaten, and strangled. Blood evidence was found on the window where the killer, Rodney Alcala, had cut himself crawling through the window. But without a means to run the DNA and no other evidence of a killer, police had no leads. Just 7 days later, on June 20th, 1979, 12-year-old Robin Christine Samso, is that tracks?
No, it's Hazel.
Oh, okay. So
I think, because she's usually the one who scratches on this door if she knows I'm in here.
Yep. Okay, sorry, let me start that over again. So 7 days later, on June 20th, 1979, 12-year-old Robin Christine Samso was hanging out at Huntington Beach with her friend. They were just doing kid stuff. I think her friend on 48 Hours said that they were having a cartwheel competition.
Mm-hmm. As they should be.
Right, they're 12. A man walked up to them and said he was a photographer and asked if he could take their picture. Robin agreed. The friend said that she seemed kind of skeeved out by him, but Robin was like a happy, like, all right, cool, take my picture, know. And, but at that moment, one of the friend's neighbors walked over to check on them when she saw the creepy man talking to them, and he took off.
Neighbor.
Yes. And Robin had to leave to go to a ballet class, so she had gotten a job at the ballet studio answering phones to kind of trade to take classes for ballet. She's only 12.
Yes.
But she, so she left because she had to go to her job, and her friend told her to take her bicycle and just to get there. But she never made it to ballet class. She was found 12 days later, dumped off of Santa Anita Canyon Road in the Los Angeles foothills. She had been raped, beaten, and stabbed. Stabbed this time.
Yeah, not strangled.
Yeah. This time, however, they had a lead because Robin's friend was able to give a description of the man who had approached them on the beach, and Rodney Alcala's parole officer recognized him. And so he was arrested, and he was held without bail this time. So Mama couldn't come to the rescue this time. At this time, he was only on trial for Robin's murder because they didn't have him connected to the other ones. And he was found...
Again, they couldn't, test his DNA and make sure it was the same as all these other...
Right, and it's not like he went in there and confessed to doing all of this, so... He was found guilty on May 8th, 1980, and he was sentenced to death. However, the California Supreme Court overturned this decision in 1984 because the jury was told of his prior sex crimes. And I never understand why juries are not allowed to know about the previous crimes of these people, because it just... it seems like it speaks to their character.
I know, but it's supposed to, bias them and they want them to just focus on this particular crime and judge them based on this particular crime. And so they're trying not to bias the jury, even though I think it's a silly rule too. I think that's really all it comes down to, is they're trying not to bias the jury. They want them just to know the facts of that particular case.
And I get that. But it's like, also, this is, that they know of, this is the fourth little girl he's attacked. So it seems like this is like what he does. And people should know that this is what he does. But anyway, so the ruling was overturned because of this. And he was given a second trial, and in May of 1986, they said that the second trial was basically exactly the same as the first trial, only without the evidence of his prior crimes. He was found guilty again, and he was sentenced to death again. And in 2001, his conviction was overturned again because he objected to something to do with evidence that the park ranger who found Robin Samso had been hypnotized by police.
Okay.
And so they, ruled in his favor, and they overturned his conviction again. So now the prosecutors were preparing for a third trial, and this was in 2003. So this has been going on for frickin' ever. But now they've learned that over Rodney Alcala's objections, his DNA had been tested and had been matched to additional murders in the Los Angeles area. So in 2004, the new indictment included the murders of Jill Barcombe, Georgia Wickstead, Charlotte Lamb, and Jill Parento. Additionally, while Rodney's sister, so this is the very brief time that she makes an appearance, she was visiting him in prison, he told her that he had a storage unit in Seattle that he needed her to clean out, immediately. But police had already found a receipt for the storage unit, and they had already gone to search it. And they found a bag with various pairs of earrings in it. So apparently that was one of his trophies, along with all the pictures he was taking, I guess. Earrings with Charlotte Lamb's DNA were found, as well as the earrings that Robin Samso's mother recognized to be the ones she was wearing the day that she was killed. Also in the locker were thousands of pictures of young women and boys.
Well, he's a successful photographer.
Successful.
He successfully takes creepy pictures.
Well, I guess if he took the pictures and developed them and they came out,
then that was successful.
That was a success. So in this third trial, Rodney Alcala decided to act as his own attorney, which is always a really good idea.
They always recommend that.
Yes. So apparently, I didn't see any clips of this. I wish that I had. He would ask and answer questions directed at himself. And so he would address himself as Mr. Alcala in a deeper than normal voice. And then he would answer himself.
I hope that he also ran between the floor and
back and forth, sitting and then jumping back and
standing there in front of the witness stand and then running behind the witness stand.
That would be I hope so too. That would be really good. So he claimed that he was at Knott's Berry Farm applying for a job as a photographer when Robin was kidnapped. He attempted to prove that Robin's earrings were actually his own by showing them a portion of his appearance on the dating game.
Okay.
But one of the guys that was on the dating game with him testified and was like, it wasn't normal for men to wear earrings in 1978, and I think we would all noticed that he was wearing earrings. It would have been weird. So during his closing argument, he played the Arlo Guthrie song Alice's Restaurant for the jury.
Okay. And
in the song, the character that is speaking is telling his psychiatrist that he wants to kill. And Arlo Guthrie just says, I want to kill, over and over. And it's really weird. And, that just seems like a bizarre choice to play when you're trying to get off of murder charges. I don't know. It was weird. But, just surprise, he was found guilty again.
Not again.
I know, right? Third time's a charm. Tally Shapiro showed up as a surprise witness for the prosecution during the penalty phase, and he was sentenced to death for the third time. In January 2011, Man, this went on forever.
Like 40 years.
Yeah, forever. So, in January 2011, a Manhattan grand jury indicted Alcala for the murders of Cornelia Crilly and Ellen Hover. He was extradited to New York, and in December 2012, he actually pled guilty to both of those murders.
Okay, fine, you got me.
I did it. The death penalty had been overturned in New York State in 2007, so the judge sentenced him to an additional 25 years to life on top of his death sentence in California, and he was sent back to California to serve his time on death row. So all of the pictures they found in the storage locker. In March 2010, Huntington Beach police posted more than 100 photos in hopes of identifying the people in the pictures, because they aren't confident that these are the only, like, the ones that he was convicted of were the only women that he had attacked or killed. There were, like, thousands of pictures.
Yeah, I mean,
but
he seems prolific.
they said that, like, there were, like, 900 pictures that they couldn't post because they were, like, sexually explicit. But, so they posted, I think it was, like, between, like, 110 and 130 pictures or something that they, like, posted on a Flickr.
Yeah.
And they were hoping that, you know, somebody would, like, see one of these people. And there was one, I didn't write it down, but because it came to me just now, where a lady got called by, like, a friend or something and was like, I just saw your picture on the news. People are looking for you. And she remembered that, like, this guy had approached her while she was, like, roller skating or something. And, like, he took her picture, but she was one of the lucky ones.
Yeah.
But after the pictures were released to the public, a woman came forward who recognized one of the pictures as her sister. Her sister was Christine Ruth Thornton. On 48 Hours, the woman tells the story that her son sent her the picture and told her that it looked like his aunt, whom he had never met, but he had heard stories about her. And the picture is of a dark-haired woman riding a motorcycle. She's wearing a yellow shirt, jeans, and sandals. And the woman said that she kind of thought it was her sister, but she was like, but maybe it's not. But then because she's wearing sandals, apparently, similar to me, she had a weird pinky toe that kind of, like, curved up, and you can see that in the picture. And she was like, this is absolutely my sister. Like, that's her weird pinky toe.
I know her by her weird toe.
Yeah. So in 1977, Christine had been 28 and had planned to move to San Antonio to live with her boyfriend. The couple broke up around Biloxi, Mississippi in June of 1977. She was last seen hitchhiking. Her body had been found in Sweetwater County, Wyoming in 1982, but police were unable to identify her until 2015 when she was matched via familial DNA.
What's he doing in Wyoming now?
Well, I think that this was the time when he had gone to New York and then he, like, drove back to Los Angeles and he was just kind of meandering across the country. So I think that that's when this part happened.
Just finding people to murder.
Yeah. So he admitted that he took the picture, but he insisted that she had been alive when he left her. Yeah. She was also
very believable,
right? I mean, he's clearly the most believable person that I've ever seen. Christine was also 6 months pregnant when she was murdered, but because he was 73 at the time that they, like, made this identification, and he was ill, Wyoming prosecutors decided not to move forward with the case against him, even though he had been charged with her murder in September of 2016. Rodney Alcala died of a heart attack on June 24th, 2021 at the age of 77. So he didn't make it to not death row. That's where you live before you.
It's where you are.
He didn't make it to the
execution or
chamber,
whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, that's not the end of the story, though. So following his death, a woman named Morgan Rowan contacted one of the original investigators on Tally Shapiro's case and told him about being attacked by Rodney Alcala twice in 1965 and 1968. So the first attack occurred in 1965 when Morgan was just 13 years old. She met Alcala in the parking lot of a teen nightclub with a group of friends. In an interview with People Magazine, because the article in People Magazine was with her and Tally Shapiro, because it was, like, survivors of Rodney Alcala. She described Alcala as tall, attractive, charismatic. He laughed easily, told stories. Young girls loved him. She said that she kept like scratching at his arm with her fingernails to get his attention, and I guess he got irritated, and he grabbed her by the arm and he drug her off into an alley behind the club, where he slammed her head into a wall and knocked her unconscious. When she came to, there was a large industrial dumpster pushed up against her.
All right.
And she screamed for help. The owner of the club and his wife came out to help her. I don't know what was going on in the 60s and the 70s, because to me, if I had been an adult and I saw this, I would have called the police.
Right.
But it doesn't seem like the police were called. So she just made an effort to stay away from this man after this. Then in August 1968, so this is 3 years later, Morgan and her family were going to move to New York, but 4 days before they left, Morgan and her friends went out for a going away party. Alcala ended up being part of the crowd of people hanging out, and I'm just like, why is this grown man hanging out with these children?
Well, because he preys on children.
Because he preys on children, but like, again, if I was an adult owner of a teenage nightclub and there was like some creepy man, right? So
this is for teenagers.
Yeah. And in 1968, it doesn't say she was at the teen nightclub, but when she was 13, like, but anyway, so Alcala ended up being part of the crowd of people that was hanging out. She and a couple of friends got into the backseat of a car because they, this group of friends was all planning to go to a restaurant. And guess whose car it turned out to be?
I can't even imagine.
It was Rodney's.
Really?
Yeah, he got into the driver's seat, and Morgan said that while she was scared, she did not get out of the car. They did go to the restaurant, and I guess at some point after they ate or whatever, she went to the bathroom. And when she came out, Rodney came up to her and told her that they were ready to go back to the Strip. They all got into the car, but instead of going to the Strip, Rodney drove to his apartment. They all went inside, they smoked weed, they listened to music, and then Alcala grabbed Morgan by the arm and pulled her into a bedroom and locked the door. She said that he punched her between her eyes, and she hit her head against the wall and she fell down, but she was still conscious. He stuffed his belt into her mouth, and she was struggling to breathe. He bound her wrists with a necktie. He punched her in the stomach until she said she could feel her ribs breaking. Mm-hmm. He cut her clothes off with a knife, and then he raped her. Her friends then apparently realized that she was missing from the group. Like, wake up, guys. Like,
they've got other stuff on their mind.
So they start pounding on the bedroom door, and a friend broke into the room through a window. And I guess after, when the friends broke into the room, he, stood up and he was all bloody because, and
he's a sweet, sweet man.
And he just told them, take her. Okay. So, take her, they did. She ran out of the house wearing only a ripped shirt. She ran in front of a moving car. The man and the woman in the car let her and her friends get into the car and drove them away. Again, why did they not take her directly to the police station or the hospital? I don't understand. So they ended up back at one of Morgan's friends' houses. I think his name was Mike. His neighbor was a nurse and provided first aid to her. And the nurse didn't call the police. She stayed at this guy's house for 4 days, and the People article says she arrived back at her parents' home minutes before they drove back to New York. It doesn't say that they were looking for her or that they knew where she was or anything. I don't know if she called and said, hey, I'm going to stay at Mike's or what. The 60s were a wild time. Yeah. That's why they had to start putting the things on the television that said at 7 o'clock, do you know where your kids are? You just don't even remember that you have them. So according to the
today we have cars that do the same thing, though.
That's true. That car did tell us that there was somebody in the back seat.
People in the back seat, and make sure you don't leave your kids in there.
It's insane. How do you not remember your kid?
Right? Aren't they, usually being annoying the whole drive?
I know mine is.
I mean, ours talks and talks and talks, and even when he was a baby, he, didn't sleep in the car. He
talks and talks and talks.
He still talked and talked and talked.
Or he's laughing at his video games, or narrating his video games, or... Yeah, I don't know. I'm not blaming her parents because I don't know if they knew where she was or not.
But also, it was just a wild time. I think that there was a lot more, like, trust in your kids and...
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, even like when we were talking about the Terry Clark case, I mean, that was the 80s, and we just went and did. Mm-hmm. I mean, granted, we usually told Mom, like, we're going to our friend's house or we're going to the 7-Eleven or whatever, but in general, like, she had no way of, like, tracking us. Mm-hmm. And I think that's how most kids were. I mean, it's like how every TV show is depicted or movie is depicted from that time. So, and even now, you know, it's like you went out until the streetlights came on. So, I don't know. So, according to the article in People, she was so traumatized that she slept next to her parents' bed in New York, but she never told them what happened to her. She also said that she feels guilty for not coming forward after the attack happened because she feels like if she had said something, she might have saved Tally from being attacked. But based on the rest of the story, I'm going to guess not.
Right.
Because they just kept...
Yeah, like I said, he was very prolific and he wasn't going to stop no matter what as long as he wasn't incarcerated.
Well, and they weren't going to incarcerate him clearly. And, I mean, they didn't do anything until he murdered somebody.
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying. Like, he wasn't going to stop doing it as long as he wasn't in prison.
Yep. So, there are 3 other victims in Washington State that police believe Alcala may be responsible for, but they don't have enough evidence to definitively tie him to those cases. And recently, Anna Kendrick directed and starred in a Netflix movie called Woman of the Hour that depicts Rodney Alcala's appearance on the dating game. I have not watched that because we don't currently have Netflix. But I kind of was reading about it, and I don't know that it's, like, super accurate.
Yeah, I was going to say, because, like, I watched that, like, Zac Efron, Ted Bundy one, and...
Oh, yeah, I liked that one.
I liked it, but I don't know that it was super accurate.
Oh.
I think they sort of elaborated a little bit.
Maybe. That one was good, though, because it was, like, based on the book that the girlfriend had written, and so that was a good one. He played a good Bundy, I think. And I really like Zac Efron,
oh, yeah,
but, like...
I'm just saying, he played a good creep.
Mm-hmm. It's not like, who was it? Stanley Tucci, where, like, I used to love Stanley Tucci, and then after he was in The Lovely Bones, like, I don't like Stanley Tucci
I still love Stanley Tucci, but he was really good at playing a creep in that movie.
He was, like, too good at it. I mean, like, he kind of redeemed himself a little bit with Easy A, because I really like his character in Easy A. Yes. But he freaking creeps me out now. Yeah. He was way too good at that. So, I did go online to look for the pictures that the Huntington Beach police had posted, and the website is really long. But if you Google, so I just Googled the words Flickr and Rodney Alcala, and you'll find a page that was posted by KPCC Southern California Radio, and it has all of the pictures on those. You can also find them on ABC 2020 Instagram. It's also posted on CBS for 48 hours. And if you have any information on any of the people depicted in those pictures, you can contact Huntington Beach Police Detective Patrick Ellis via phone at 714-375-5066 or email at pellis, P-E-L-L-I-S, at hbpd.org. And remember that the images were shot before July 1979, so that's kind of the time period that you're looking at. And that is the story of the dating game killer.
That is the story of the dating game killer.
You know, I think serial killer names are misleading sometimes.
Yeah.
Because the dating game killer almost makes you feel like he was preying on people who appeared on the dating game or something.
Or that he would have killed the girl that he won the date with. But it really doesn't have much to do with the dating game at all.
No.
He just happens to be a guy that was on the dating game.
Yeah, that just, like, in the middle of his, like, murder spree,
he stopped and got a little date.
Didn't even get a date.
Well, I mean, he won a date. He just didn't get to go on it.
But, yeah, so I felt like that was kind of misleading. So that is our story, and again, we're really sorry about last week, and
hopefully going forward we won't have as many technical difficulties. We're probably going to start recording in the studio again soon.
Yep. And remember, you can find us on social media at Twisted and Mysterious. You can email us at twistedandmysteriouspodcast@gmail.com. And
I think that's about it.
So what?
Well, nothing else really, but remember that people are gross and don't get murdered.
Mm-hmm.
We'll hopefully see you next week.
Hopefully we'll see you Wednesday at midnight. So. Bye.